Let me also now introduce our guest joining us this evening. We have Member of Parliament from the BJP, Anurag Sharma. We'll shortly be joined by Member of Parliament from the TMC, Dr. Santanu Singh. We also have spokesperson of the Congress Party, Aadil Singh Boparai. And we also have senior editor of the Swaraj magazine, Tushar Gupta. Good to have all of you on the broadcast with us. Anurag Sharma, let me begin with you first, because the opposition parties are all up in arms today, and then it's not just the Congress. It's the AIMM, it's the TMC. Every party that you name it today has an issue as far as this unparliamentary list is concerned. The opposition is seeing this as a diktat. Also, look at some of the words that are part of this list. Words like corrupt, words like drama, hypocrisy. These are words that we use in our common conversation every single day. So the opposition is asking, why have they been banned?
Look, I don't think so any word is as such being banned. The list which comes out, it says these words are going to be expunged. One, and if you heard the Lok Sabha speaker, I just heard his new press conference, where he's been very categorical. He said, look, if a member uses a certain word, no action will be taken against him. But it's the context the word is used in, and this list has come out every year since 1999, virtually. And I think we just need to up the parliamentary debate. A lot of times we are just hurling abuses, or even in the various Vidhan Sabhas across the country. What kind of an impression are you really giving to the people? So if words are being expunged later, they're also expunged with the members' knowledge. So if I've said something unparliamentary in, let's say, during one of my debates in Parliament, then if I've said something unparliamentary, someone has an objection, or the speaker himself has an objection, I get the part of the speech back to me and saying these are the words being removed, or this word was said in this context. So if I have an objection, I can go back to the Lok Sabha speaker, to the honorable speaker, and explain my stance. So if my stance is good enough, they will allow it. If it's not, it will be expunged. I really don't think there is a huge issue about this.
No, the problem actually is, and the voice that is being raised by most of the opposition parties is that there is a very selective choosing of these words, because most of these words are used for criticizing the government. So the government has basically done away with most of the words which are used for criticism.
Look, it's not the word per se. Let's be very clear. It's not the word per se. It is the context. It is the context you use the word. So if it is derogatory to any member, and it's not that it's just the opposition which uses it. I think a lot of us from the treasury benches also tend to use these words, and they're used. I mean, some really bad words are used in some of the Vidhan Sabhas. I've seen some of those speeches. I've heard some of those debates. You can't even use those on national TV.
Aadil, let me bring you in. What is the problem if we're trying to bring a sense of sanity as far as the parliament language is concerned? I agree with what Anurag Sharma is saying, that some of the times you feel actually embarrassed listening to the language that is being used by elected representatives. And more importantly, this isn't the first time that this has been done. Every year a similar list comes out. So why is the opposition up in arms today?
Well, good evening, Ridhima, and thank you for having me on your program. Point number one, if the objective is to curtail hate, then I think the biggest purveyor of hate in this country is the BJP, number one. Number two, I think it is important that when you, as public speakers, when we make speeches, it is the context which has to be seen. I would partially agree with Mr. Sharma, who's an erudite individual, and I'm quite pleasantly surprised that he's not like his colleagues. They basically, when you're making speeches, you have to see the context, you have to see the larger issue which is being discussed. For example, you often put questions, or you often make speeches in a rhetorical fashion to drive home a point. You often use satire for your speeches. So I think the context has to certainly be seen when you're making these speeches. Number three, what we've consistently noticed, and this is verifiable from independent record, that since the BJP has come to power, the average number of days on which the parliament has sat has consistently reduced. Similarly, the concept of standing committees was started in the early 1990s, where it was thought that it is important that bills are sent to a chamber to be discussed dispassionately and threadbare. We are noticing that the number of bills which are sent to the standing committees has also significantly diminished. Now, coming to my larger point, Ridhima, and perhaps you may concur with me on this, that parliamentary discussions are the lifeblood of any democracy. it is important, regardless of where we stand on the political aisle, that there has to be a healthy exchange of views and ideas. So therefore, I think it is incumbent on the ruling dispensation to encourage deliberations, encourage dissent, because that would also reduce or lessen street protests. After all, in a parliamentary democracy, the concern or the appropriate chamber to discuss issues threadbare is the parliament. So therefore, instead
Adil,
of
I understand the point that you're
speech,
making, but
you
hear
must
me out.
encourage
Adil, hear me
speech.
out. The point that you're making, agreed. But what the reason that I'm trying to understand is, one, this list comes out, every single year. And look at some of the examples that I'll give you. A word like lollipop was expunged in the budget from the Punjab Assembly as far as the previous government is concerned. You've reached here telling a lie was again expunged from the Punjab Assembly. So it's a common practice. And as I pointed out, not just in India, but internationally as well.
Ridhima, I again come back to my preliminary point. Words have to be seen in a certain context. When you're making a speech, for example, let's take the example of Jumla. What is Jumla? Jumla is a false promise. When the current dispensation and its highest echelons promise 15 lakh rupees, they admit and candidly admit that that was a Jumla. So are we remiss in saying that you had given a Jumla to the people of this country, that you will transfer 15 lakh rupees into the account? So therefore, the context has to be seen. But coming to the larger point, I think it's in the interest of democracy that free, fair and healthy discussions are encouraged. The parliament sits for a longer period of time, what was envisaged by our constitution makers, and more number of bills are sent to standing committees so that erudite individuals like Mr. Sharma can discuss that threadbare and come out with the final bill which is in the best interest of our country.
Okay. Member of Parliament from the TMC, Dr. Santanu is also now joining us. Sir, good to have you on the broadcast with us. I'm trying to understand what is the larger issue here. As I gave you examples when I started the show, that not just in India, it happens in India also every year. Internationally also, it's a common practice. There is also a sense today that is this the only issue that the opposition today wants to focus on? I would like to believe that there are other issues that the opposition would want to focus their energy on. Inflation, economy and other things. Is a list really at the top of the priority as far as the opposition is concerned?
See, there are several issues and the entire country is burning inside and outside. And it is clear to each and every one. And that's why this BJP is very much scared and apprehensive, knowing fully well that the oppositions are going to burst. They are going to be in a furious mood in the coming monsoon session. That's why they have done this. Let me cite you some example. In 8 years, Narendra Modi ji never faced a single question asked by any media person. In last 7 years, Narendra Modi ji never came to Rajya Sabha to answer a single question. Earlier, at least 7 out of 10 bills used to be scrutinized. Now hardly 1 out of 10 bills is getting scrutinized. In last monsoon session, when I was suspended in an unparliamentary way, 28 to 29 bills were literally passed by bulldozing. Hardly few bills are sent to the select committees or standing committees for their opinion. Just remember the voting pattern and voting issue of this farmers bill. How they forcefully bulldozed. The issue is they are totally believing in the unilateralism. You remember few years back that there was a censorship on Parliament, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha TV, so that the voice of the opposition can't be heard by the people at large across the country. So basically Parliament is the parliamentary floor is for the opposition. That is the basic essence of parliamentary democracy. And this BJP ruled government, they are ruining each and every institution. They are throttling the voice of the opposition.
Okay. While I'll take the larger